Hey everyone, welcome back to Down Periscope, Up Periscope. I'm Tim, your host, and I'm here to introduce today a new member of our team here on Blueback. Not a submariner per se, but he is very quiet. He's a bit shy. He's very still, and he's very, very stealthy. This is Neil here. He's our SEAL, also known as Dan the Diver or Diver Dan, but I like to call him Neil. So he's Neil the SEAL. Yes, indeed. So a little backstory. Of course, he's not real, right? He's just a mannequin. But one of our volunteer tour guides, himself a submariner and also a Navy trained diver, he went to dive school in the Navy, donated this to us. And basically, he tells me that the way he fitted Neil out here is that the equipment that Neil is wearing is roughly representative of what Navy UDTs, underwater demolition team members, and SEALs would wear circa the 1970s. So about 1970 to 74, thereabouts. So yeah. That being said, he lacks the horse collar BCD, buoyancy compensating device, around his neck. We don't have a scuba tank for him or anything like that. And furthermore, his wetsuit is textured, when in reality it would be smooth. It's not quite the right wetsuit. He lacks a few other pieces of equipment. But other than that, according to our volunteer tour guide, himself a submariner and Navy diver, this is roughly what a SEAL would wear circa the 70s. He does distinguish as well between a SEAL like Neil here and a diver, because a diver would have like a hard diving helmet. Not quite what Neil has, of course. He just has, a hood and a mask and regulator and all that. So now Blueback herself could deploy special ops guys, not only SEALs, but she could have like, recon Marines, Force Recon or whatever, Marine Raiders, Special Forces from the Army and things like that. Now, Blueback could use her forward escape trunk, which is above the torpedo room here where I am, to deploy special ops guys like SEALs or Recon Marines or even Army Special Forces into the field. So what they would do is that they would climb up into the escape trunk with their equipment, like one or maybe two guys at a time. They'd flood that chamber after they close the doors and then open up the outer door and swim out and head ashore, all when the submarine's about 60 or 50 feet below the surface. Everything they do beyond that is classified, and then a couple days later, the submarine can come back and pick those guys up the same way they went out. To my knowledge, Blueback never actually shot anybody, especially not these guys, out the torpedo tubes. That's not how they would get out of the submarine. They would get out through the escape trunk up there. In the movies, of course, you see a lot of characters getting fired out torpedo tubes. Like, famously, my mind goes back to like James Bond movies. I know in the movie You Only Live Twice, Sean Connery playing James Bond, he's in a British submarine and he gets ashore to Japan. He literally he puts on a wetsuit, he puts on a mask like this, he climbs into a torpedo tube and they hit the firing key and just, phew, you just get shot right out of the tube. I don't know if he would survive that, especially not on this submarine, because this submarine ejects torpedoes from the tubes hydraulically with a big 3,000-pound pressurized water slug, so having that thing shove you out of the tube probably would not be survivable. I've also heard stories of like foreign submarines out there who do actually deploy special forces out through the torpedo tubes, but they simply climb into the tube with all their gear. They just shove their gear in there. Then the tube is flooded and the pressure is equalized and the outer door of the tube is open. And then the diver swims out of the tube, moving their gear out ahead of them. So you can get out the tube that way. It is possible. You wouldn't really be shot out of the tube like a torpedo, so to speak. And of course, there's other James Bond movies like The World Is Not Enough, where Pierce Brosnan plays James Bond. The submarine they're in is like hit the bottom, and they escape through one of the torpedo tubes, but they basically use it like an escape trunk. So, and actually, James Bond, he tells his love interest, Denise Richards, who's playing like the most unconvincing nuclear physicist, he says, "Remember to exhale on the way up." And we're like, yes, because you will figure out what Boyle's law is if you attempt to hold your breath. Yes, when you're at depth and you rise to the surface, you need to exhale the air out of your lungs, because the gas in your lungs will expand as you rise to the surface since it's decreasing pressure. And if you hold your breath, your lungs are going to explode. It will not be very fun. Now, of course, the escape trunk is nominally used to actually escape the submarine. So right here, This orange hood in this cabinet here is a stanky hood. That was what they used to use for escaping a submarine. So all submarine sailors, when you were training in sub school, would put those on. You would go to like the bottom or like sometimes 40 feet down of this like 100-foot escape tower, and you would put your hood on. They would pressurize the chamber. Then you'd swim out and rise to the surface, and there would be divers positioned along the length of this tower as you rose to the surface, and they saw that you weren't exhaling on the way up. They would grab you and punch you in the stomach to make you like exhale. It's like, breathe out. Yes. So, and you just, you wear your stanky hood and you say, ho, 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 all the way up. And also, one interesting thing that I recall is the only movie that I've seen to do this is the movie Black Sea. It's got Jude Law in it. He plays this old like retired submarine guy, and they're looking for gold at the bottom of the Black Sea in this submarine. But anyway, the submarine is on the bottom and these guys need to escape it. So that movie shows like modern day submarine immersion escape suits. Like it's a full body suit that replaced the stanky hood. They get into these suits, and I think they're actually the genuine things. So somehow the film production actually got some genuine submarine immersion escape suits. But they climb into the torpedo tube, he floods it, and they swim out, and the characters go to the surface that way. So I thought that was pretty cool. It's like, wow, that's a genuine escape suit that they would use today. Kind of getting back to the topic at hand. Our volunteer tour guide tells me that most submarine crews would have at least a couple of actual members of the crew, the sub crew, who would have gone to Navy dive school and who would be trained divers. Now, they're not special ops guys like Neil here. Navy divers would be trained in a variety of things like, ship husbandry, repair, maintenance, things like that, harbor clearing operations and things like that, inspection of hulls and stuff like that. So our volunteer tour guide, who's a Navy diver, actually back in July of 2025, he dove on the boat, on Blueback herself, as she is right now in the Willamette River. And he kind of visually inspected the hull. He took pictures, he took video, he showed me what parts of the hull look like so I can kind of see what it is. And we were looking for any evidence of serious corrosion or deterioration of the hull. And as far as we can tell, he didn't see anything concerning. So yeah, as far as we can tell, the hull, the Blueback herself, is doing pretty good. There's no significant corrosion on it that we could find. There's that. But that being said, he does also, admit that he is a Navy diver, but he's not an engineer. He's not a marine architect. So he couldn't really evaluate, how the hull actually structurally was. But best he could do is he could just visually inspect it and tell me what he saw. And he showed me. So looks pretty good otherwise. So I have a screen cap here I took. This is what the Willamette River looks like underneath the water. Remember, this is back in July when there's lots of like bright sunlight out there. So he's holding a flashlight off camera here, right about here, and he's shining it forwards. And there's so much silt and crap and other things in the river, you can't see anything. He is like 5 or 6 feet away from the hull of the submarine in this shot. You cannot see it. That's how murky the water is. So when kids always ask me on tours, like, where are the windows on the submarine? I want to see windows. How do they know where they're going? Blah, 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 blah. Is the submarine going underwater? Where are the windows? I want to see windows. And they're like, windows? Well, first of all, this submarine has a test depth of about 712 feet. Anywhere below about 600 or 650 feet, there's no sunlight. It is pitch black down there. If there was a window on this submarine, you're not going to see anything. So what are you hoping to see? Oh, I want to see fish and whales and things like that. You wouldn't see fish or whales down there unless you drove through a pod of whales or a school of fish somewhere, right? So even then, like, they just don't realize, like, it's not like all this stuff is coming right up to the submarine. So let's say we had a window and we had big, strong floodlights out there. This is not a research submarine. There's no need for this submarine to have windows or big exterior lights or headlights on it or anything like that. It has no need for that. So even if there were windows and this submarine were underwater, the chances of you even finding whales and dolphins and fish and cool stuff to look at is pretty small. Yeah. Now there are, of course, fish in the Willamette River where we are here. So I also tell kids, you know what, if you want to see fish, when we go outside after the tour, look down into the river and start counting the fish. Tell me how many you find. You cannot even see the bottom of the river from where you're standing on the dock. And it's about 30 feet deep, 35 feet deep at the dock. Best of luck finding the fish, kids. So yeah, there's nothing to see out there, okay? Get rid of this idea that you're gonna have this underwater adventure with big windows on the submarine. There's lots of light down there, and you're gonna see all these fish and sharks and whales and dolphins and other animals down there. No, not happening. Getting back to kind of the topic of special ops guys, the most people that I've ever heard who were on Blueback at any given time was like 120 or thereabouts. In addition to the 85 crewmen, there was a team of Navy SEALs, there's a team of recon Marines, and a group from the CIA. They were operating off some port or some coastline of some country back during the Cold War. I'll give you one guess as to what that country was. And they were doing some kind of special op or something, and they needed to have SEALs and Marines and CIA guys on board. So yeah, that's what they had. So I also understand that in January of 1979, Blueback actually did an exercise, a training exercise with Army Special Forces. Now, it's worth noting that most of the riders on board the submarine, like SEALs, or maybe you're carrying spooks, cryptologic technicians, or, you know, CIA guys, or recon Marines, or special forces, or whatever, right? They're riders. They're not actually a part of the crew. They're not qualified submarine sailors, and so they're not doing the stuff that the submarine sailors are normally doing, you know? And furthermore, like unlike Star Trek or whatever, you have the away team, and the captain goes, you know, down to the planet with the away team. The captain of the submarine is not going to go with the SEALs here off to do whatever their secret mission is or something like that. That's not going to happen. So the captain and the submarine crew is going to stick with the submarine. These guys are going to go do whatever they want to do. And furthermore, Navy divers themselves does not necessarily mean they're special ops guys. So just about all the major special operations forces, whether they be SEALs, recon Marines, Army Special Forces, I think some units in the Air Force, like the 24th Special Tactics Squadron or whatever, even the Coast Guard has like dive lockers, trained divers and stuff. Most of those special ops guys, they have special like combat diving curriculum and schools that they go to as well. And so they are like scuba or, you know, trained in open circuit or closed circuit scuba gear and rebreathers and all that stuff. So they would be trained in combat diving as well. So, but they are distinct from Navy divers and what they do. So we also need to kind of divorce ourselves with this idea that, you know, one type of special ops unit is like the superior, the best, the elitistest, whatever, you know. So everyone has their own kind of separate job. Like I said, all those different units like have their own kind of set of dive training, right? Could an Army Special Forces soldier do a frogman mission like a Navy SEAL? Yeah, probably. They're both trained in diving. So yeah. Could a recon Marine do other missions that a SEAL or a Special Forces guy or whatever could do? Yeah, sure. It just depends on, you know, what this unit is, what their area of specialty or their skills are, their kind of missions and objectives that they would be tasked with. That's what they would do. So there's no such thing as a best, you know, special ops unit, right? Doesn't mean just because like you're Delta Force or you're, you know, Nav Dev Gru or something that you're like the bestest or whatever, you know. So yeah. In addition to inserting special operations teams, Blueback is very much capable of collecting other forms of intelligence, specifically electronic intelligence or signals intelligence like ELINT or SIGINT. The vast majority of what Blueback did during her 31 years of service was operate as a spy submarine, as an intelligence gathering platform. So using her periscopes, Blueback actually has the capability of attaching specialized cameras to mount to these periscope eyepieces, and they can take photographic intelligence of ships or other submarines or vessels out there on the waters. One of our volunteer tour guides, Rick Nolt, a former Bonefish and Blueback sailor, told me that he did do one special operation with the Bonefish during her time that he was aboard her. Now, he can't say where this was, but during the Cold War, again, I'll give you one guess as to where it may have been. They were operating off some kind of port, and Rick Nolt had previously gone to periscope photography school so he could learn how to use a camera attached to one of these periscopes, and he would stand here with the shutter button, the shutter release, and the guy looking through the camera, right, would be swiveling the periscope around, and he would tell them when to hit the shutter release to take a picture. So they were off some port somewhere, which they can't say, which may have been at some point in time, which they can't tell. And they would sneak in during the daytime, raise up the periscope, and they would be taking pictures of ships or submarines or shore installations or whatever through their periscopes. At night, they would sneak back out of the port, go out to the open sea, start their diesel engines, raise up the snorkel masts, of course, recharge the batteries, then shut down the diesel engines, lower the snorkel masts, sneak back in the next day, and take more pictures through their periscopes. And that's what they did a couple of times to get photographic intelligence. Other electronic intelligence gathering capabilities of Blueback involve her ECM space back here, or nowadays more commonly called ESM, or electronic support measures, rather than electronic countermeasures. These are all receivers back here. Now, some of them are not actually on the Blueback during their time in service. For example, some of these oscilloscopes are new pieces of equipment. They're just showing you, some of the stuff that would have been back here. But Blueback could get close to a shoreline, raise up her ECM BLR antenna, and using that antenna, she can scan various bands along the electromagnetic frequency spectrum and basically locate, classify, and ID various emitters that are out there, whether they be like radars, communications, and so on, using this equipment here to classify that intelligence. And they can get more about what some adversary or enemy has. Because the more you know about what they have, the more you can make an intelligent decision based on what they have and what options you have following that. Blueback's radio room here is one of the most highly restricted and secure areas on the entire submarine. You would absolutely not be allowed near this space unless you had a reason to be here, or if you were working on something in here, you would need to have an escort to mind you while you worked on some of the wiring or something in here for whatever reason. Otherwise, expect to have a loaded weapon pointed in your face if you attempt to access this room. Further back here, in this room where I'm sitting, this is the crypto room, where the spook teams would be operating on this submarine. Blueback could carry cryptologic or cryptographic technicians on board. These might be linguists, they might be translators, they might be people with understanding of cryptanalysis, code breaking, things like that. By raising her communications antennas, Blueback can similarly intercept and decode transmissions and signals, read enemy mail, and things like that. She could also collect signals intelligence in that way. Blueback did a number of patrols off Vietnam during the Vietnam War. We're not entirely certain, but we're pretty sure at some point in time during the Vietnam War, she probably, we don't know, but she probably laid a minefield somewhere off Vietnam. So she was loaded up with mines at one point. She may very well have laid a minefield and done other special operations. But again, all this stuff, these various special ops missions that Blueback did in her service, is actually still classified. It's redacted. So anything in the deck logs is just, it's not there. The deck log will just say, conducted special ops or something like that. And there's just no detail in it. It just says, blah, 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 did something. So yeah, the different kinds of special ops missions that submarines can do really varies. And I'm just talking about an attack submarine like Blueback. There's nothing terribly special about Blueback. This is not even getting into the special project submarines, the submarines that are specifically modified for really clandestine, like black projects that conducted by, naval intelligence, stuff like that during the Cold War, like Halibut, right? Halibut could trail these cameras on wires and these big lights behind her, and they would take photographs of pieces of Russian missiles that had splashed into the ocean. They were looking for pieces of Russian missiles that they had fired, right? They were looking for the K-129 as part of Project Azorian, before the Hughes Glomar Explorer came and recovered part of that submarine for the CIA, right? You got other submarines like Parche, arguably the most decorated submarine in all of U.S. history, right? She did all kinds of special ops missions that nobody will hear about. And today we've got the Jimmy Carter, an elongated version of a Seawolf class submarine. And in the middle of the Jimmy Carter is a big area of something we don't know, a bunch of high-tech secret submarine gear of secretness. I don't know what it is, and nobody knows. And I've met sailors from Jimmy Carter, and of course, they naturally can't tell me what it is, but there's something in Jimmy Carter that makes it real special and now makes it the premier spy boat. She's taken over the Parche's role as the U.S. Navy's really secret missions submarine, really hush-hush secret type stuff, really secret-secrety stuff, so yeah. So there's that. So I'm not even talking about those kinds of submarines, but yes, there are submarines that are specifically modified to do those really clandestine missions, whatever they're doing. They could be doing like wiretaps or finding undersea cables and this, that, and the other. So all kinds of stuff that you'll never hear about. Yeah. Of course, the joke they say is, how do you know someone is a pilot or a naval aviator? Well, they're going to tell you. How do you know someone is a Navy SEAL? Well, he's going to sell you his book rights and they'll probably make a Hollywood movie out of it. How do you know someone was a submariner? You won't, because they won't tell you about it. There's a reason why the submarine service is also known as the silent service. They don't talk much about their operations and what they did. Submarines as a platform are naturally very, very stealthy. They can collect something like, I think it's like 7% of the remaining electronic intelligence that overt platforms like an aircraft or a satellite cannot collect. Because everybody knows where the satellites are, everybody knows where the aircraft is, flying overhead, collecting electronic intelligence. But a submarine can just sneak in, raise up its mast, get that electronic intelligence, and sneak back out. So yeah, it's very good as a covert platform for inserting special ops guys, for collecting intelligence and and data and things like that, and doing other kinds of sneaky stuff. So hence the silent service. All right, everyone. Well, that's pretty much going to do it for this one. I just want to introduce Neil here, our newest member of the crew here on Blueback. He's just calmly waiting here to tell you about special ops on submarines. So there you have it.